Cool. All right. Okay, so just a little overview of what we'll kind of talk about today. So do a little background on the hexagram rituals and kind of how they differ from pentagram rituals. And then we'll go through the lesser ritual, the hexagram, the greater ritual, the hexagram, and then we'll attempt to parse some semblance of understanding of the Star Sapphire ritual. And for most of the reference material comes from Liber O 777, the Book of Lies, and Book 4, and also The Magic of Aleister Crowley by Milo Duquette. And on the right-hand side, you can see Eliphas Levy's illustration of the Great Seal of Solomon, which is in a hexagram formation. Okay, so hexagram versus pentagram. And throughout this, if anyone has any questions or comments, feel free to jump in. And I can't see the videos right now, so feel free to just jump in. Okay, so in general, the number 5 is associated with man, and to that extent, the microcosm. Typically, they have elemental attributions, so earth, air, water, fire, and spirit. Okay. The number 6 is associated with God or the heavens, meaning one more than man, or more than man. So therefore, the macrocosm. And the hexagram rituals have forms for both the macrocosmic elemental workings, so kind of the bigger than the pentagram microcosmic elemental workings in a way, and then meaning the less, so the elemental hexagram rituals are the lesser rituals of the pentagram, or excuse me, the hexagram, and the planetary workings are the greater rituals of the hexagram. So in a way, the lesser are more broad and the greater are more specific. Okay, so Crowley states in Liber O that this ritual, meaning the lesser ritual of the hexagram, is to be performed after the lesser ritual of the pentagram. So it is used for invoking or banishing macrocosmic elemental forces in the temple space. And elements are usually associated with different quarters than those of the lesser ritual of the pentagram, microcosmic versus macrocosmic viewpoint. So it's kind of the difference is kind of if your perspective is on the surface of the earth, so kind of the microcosmic viewpoint, then you have air in the east, fire in the south, water in the west, and earth in the north. But from a macrocosmic kind of universal, like from the universe's perspective, for the hexagram rituals, fire is in the east, earth is in the south, air is in the west, and water is in the north. Now, there are two kind of different models that are used, and both are found in Agrippa's 3 books of occult philosophy, where the microcosmic viewpoint with air in the east uses the 4 winds model, where the solar model, where fire is in the east, the one that is called with fire in the east is called the solar model, and this is kind of the justification. So with the 4 winds model, the winds from the east are warm and moist, so air is in the east. The winds from the south are warm and dry, so fire is in the south. The winds from the west are cool and moist, so water is in the west. And the winds from the north are cool and dry, so earth is in the north. Versus the solar model, which is based more on the zodiacal attributions. So the most northward sun is in the summer solstice, and that is Cancer, and that's therefore its water is in the north. The most southward sun, winter solstice, Capricorn, therefore the earth is in the south. The beginning of the year, east, vernal equinox, Aries, fire. So fire's in the east. And the end of the year, west, the autumnal equinox, Libra, air, is in the west. So that's one justification for why the quarters have different elemental attributions in the pentagram rituals versus the hexagram rituals. It's all about perspective. Okay, so now before we move on to the actual lesser ritual, the hexagram, does anyone have any questions or comments before we move on? Okay. All right, so how do you perform the lesser ritual of the hexagram? Okay, so we'll just kind of go through the steps. So first, you stand upright, feet together, and this is right out of Libra, I think, so easily findable. Stand up upright, feet together, left arm at side, right across the body, holding the wand or other weapon upright in the median line, then face east and say, I-N-R-I, Yod, Nun, Resh, Yod, Virgo, Isis, Mighty Mother, Scorpio, Apophis, Destroyer, Sol, Osiris, Slain and Risen, Isis, Apophis, Osiris, Then you extend your arms in the form of a cross and say, the sign of Osiris slain. And then the next bit of directions is basically to make the sign of the morning of Isis. It's easier just to show you the picture. And then raise arms at an angle 60 degrees, which is the sign of Apophis in Typhon. Cross the arms in the breast and bow the head and say the sign of Osiris risen. And then finally, you extend your arms again and then cross them again, saying LVX, Lux, the light of the cross. And this portion of the ritual is known as the analysis of the keyword, and it comes from a Golden Dawn ritual, the hexagram ritual, but I think it was first introduced in the 5=6 degree. I'm not 100% sure on that, but yeah. Okay, so here are the signs, the LVX signs. They're known as the LVX signs. So we have the sign of Osiris slain, the morning of Isis. So the right hand is up with the elbow at a 90-degree angle. The head is kind of bent, looking down to the left. The right arm is, or excuse me, the left arm is pointing down at a right degree angle, and then your right leg is bent and kind of behind you. So it forms the swastika or the lightning bolt. And then the sign of Typhon, which is just the head thrown back and the arms open at a V. And then finally the sign of Osiris risen, which is just the arms crossed over the chest. Okay, so after the analysis of the keyword, we draw some hexagram figures, and these aren't necessarily what you would think of as a hexagram, some of them, but they are a hexagram because they have a total of 6 sides or 6 points. And so the order and orientation of the triangles determines what elemental attribution is associated with them. 1 second. Okay, so sorry, just I need to take 1 second. Okay. So with the magical weapon, trace the hexagram of fire in the east, saying Ararita. Okay, so the way that this is drawn is with the upper triangle You start at the right-hand side and you go around in a clockwise direction. And then you starting with kind of the center point of the first triangle, you draw again in a clockwise direction, starting with the right-hand side of the triangle. So the word Ararita is what is known as notaricon, which means it is made from the initials of a sentence. Doesn't like my explanation. Sorry about that. And so the Hebrew phrase is Akkad Rosh Ado Akdo Tho Rosh Ikudo Rosh Temurato Akkad. And my Hebrew is horrible, but essentially that means one is his beginning, one is his individuality, his permutation is one. Okay, so next is we go to the south and we draw the hexagram of Earth, which is kind of the traditional hexagram form, where you have you start with the upward pointing triangle, the right hand side of that triangle, and draw it in a clockwise manner. And then starting at the bottom point of the second triangle, you draw to the left and into a clockwise manner. And that's the hexagram of Earth. So you draw that and then say Ararita. And it says that this hexagram should be capable of being inscribed in a circle. Next, we do the hexagram of Air, which are two triangles with the bottoms kind of touching. I kind of remember this one as it looks like an A because of the top triangle, but it's in the same manner where the upper right hand side, you start with the top point and go in a clockwise manner. Start at the bottom point and go in a clockwise manner for the second triangle. So again, you trace the hexagram of Air in the west, saying Ararita. That's the Earth. And then for the hexagram of Water in the north, and say Ararita. And the way that I remember this one is it kind of looks like a goblet or a cup. And so it's the bottom triangles that you start with, and then you go with the top triangle. And then you repeat the analysis of the keyword. And so the going in a clockwise direction is the invoking ritual. And then if you go in the counterclockwise direction, then it is a banishing ritual. Okay, next is the greater ritual of the hexagram. And Liber O says this is to invoke or banish planets or zodiacal signs. And the instructions are pretty vague, but most people presume that it's essentially the same as the general structure and in the general structure of the lesser ritual of the hexagram. So again, you start with the analysis of the keyword, and then you start your drawing in the east with the hexagrams, and there is a different hexagram for each planet. And for each the zodiacal sign, you use the ruling planet for that zodiacal sign. So then you draw the hexagram for that particular planet. Then you draw the planetary sign or zodiac sign in the center of the hexagram. And then you, in all cases, use a conjuration first with Ararita, and next with the name of the god corresponding to the planet or sign you are dealing with. And you can look that up in 777. And then you close again with the analysis of the keyword. So that's kind of the general structure. And then alternatively, there are many variations, and please don't take any of this as gospel or dogma. It's because we don't like those words. I find that experimentation is best, and so please experiment and report back and tell us how your experiment went. Did something work better if you did it slightly different, and whatnot. So a couple of variations that I've seen is you can face the direction of the planet in the sky at the time, or you can use that as the starting place. You could also like cast transit horoscope for the hour of the working and set the rising sign as east. So those are all different ways that I've seen it done and heard about. Okay, so any questions? Yeah.
Familiar with the hexagram ritual, been doing it a long time. Not so much the greater with the planetary workings, etc. So I was wondering if you could comment, like let's say I was performing a planetary hexagram ritual for Saturn, then I would do essentially the same Earth invoking because it's Earth and Saturn. Is that at every single corner that you do that same hexagram for Saturn? And then if you could also comment on the notation of the hexagram of the sun, that would be wonderful.
Absolutely. So for your first question, my understanding is that, so if you were going to do an invoking greater ritual, the hexagram for Saturn, then you would draw the hexagram for Saturn in each quarter.
That's what I've been doing, and I kind of assumed that, but
yeah. Now, as far as the second question, that's a fun one to do. So so I've seen this done two ways. First is if you some people like to just use the unicursal hexagram, and that's what they use for the sun. Usually starting at the top and going in a right hand, to the right if you're doing invoking, and to the left you're doing banishing. The way that it's written in Liber O is that basically you start at every point and you go in lightning flash order, meaning, so you start with Saturn and go to Jupiter. So you start with Saturn and draw the two hexagrams, then you go to Jupiter and draw the two opposing hexagrams, and then you go to Mars and draw the two hexagrams. So you start with the if you were to put it on the tree of life like this, you'd start in the corner of the hexagram of the Sephira of the planet, and then for the first triangle, and then for the second triangle, you do the opposite one. And so you basically do 6 hexagrams. You draw all the hexagrams for the sun, and it's incredibly invigorating and exhausting at the same time. You build up I found that one builds up quite a bit of energy doing it that way. So I hope that helps.
Yeah, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
I was just going to add that, in other words, a solar hexagram is literally drawing all of the planetary hexagrams, and I like your phrase in lightning flash order.
Mm-hmm.
So like
that's how I remember it.
the sun is literally the harmony of all the other planets. So
okay. All right. So now for the more, this is less of a definitive than even the stars or the hexagram, the greater hexagram rituals. Okay, so the first time that I probably ran across the Star Sapphire was in the Book of Lies, chapter 36, called the Star Sapphire. And the notes on this chapter say the Star Sapphire corresponds with the Star Ruby of chapter 25, 36 being the square of 6, as 25 is a 5. This chapter gives the real and perfect ritual of the hexagram. It would be improper to comment further upon an official ritual of the AA. Okay, so along those lines, so kind of translating that a little bit. So this is, we could say that the Star Sapphire is the updated Thelemic version of the hexagram ritual, like the Star Ruby is for the Pentagram ritual. Okay, it was published in 1913 in the Book of Lies, and there's rank speculation that this is the troublesome chapter that led Crowley to be initiated into the 9th degree of O.T.O. From the explanation in Crowley's Confessions in chapter 72. As the instruction begins with "Let the adept," And as adept assumes a particular level of attainment within the system of the AA, there are many aspects we can only approximate or give our best guess. So this is meant to be an introduction, not a comprehensive analysis. I am not an adept of the AA, so I cannot comment on if any of this is actually what it means or anything like that. This is just kind of my own explanation or investigation. So your mileage may vary. Okay, so let's go through the text of the ritual. So it begins, let the adept be armed with his magic rood and provided with his mystic rose. In the center, let him give the LVX signs, or if you know them, if he will and dare do them, and can keep silent about them, the signs of NOX, being the signs of puer, vir, puella, mulier. Omit the sign IR. Okay, so it took a number of readings, but something stood out to me, kind of putting this together a while ago, which is that these are the 4 powers of the Sphinx: to know, to will, to dare, and to keep silent. So that's kind of interesting. I don't know exactly what it would necessarily mean, but it's there, and it's clearly there. So what are these Nox signs? Okay, so Puella is the sign for girl, right? So it's standing upright, place open right hand over the breast and the open left hand over the groin. Okay, and then puer, which is the boy, right arm forms an L with closed hand, thumb pointing towards the head. Closed left hand rests at the base of the torso, thumb pointing away from the body. Then the sign of Vir, which is man, place closed hands at the temples with thumbs facing outwards, resembling horns. I think there's probably one of the most famous images of Crowley is in the sign of Vir. Okay, and next is Mulier, which is arms form a 90-degree angle above the head, elbows bent slightly, with hands open. Feet are a little over the shoulder width apart, facing forwards, head looks upward. So this is somewhat similar to the sign of Apophis and Typhon, except the arms are bent and the legs are spread apart. Then finally is Isis rejoicing, or IR, as it's in the ritual, or also known as Mater Triumphans. Head looking downwards, the right hand pinches the left nipple while the left hand cradles just below the solar plexus as if holding a baby. All right. So then draw some hexagrams. So then let him advance to the east and make the holy hexagram, saying, Pater et Mater unus Deus arita. Let him go around to the south, make the holy hexagram and say, Mater et Filius unus Deus arita. Let him go round to the west, make the holy hexagram, and then say, Filius et Filia unus Deus arita. Let him go to the north and make the holy hexagram and say, Filia et Pater unus Deus arita. Okay. So what the heck is this holy hexagram? There's only one place that I kind of know where it describes the holy hexagram, which is the Book of Wise, and it is, I can't see what it says, I forget, chapter 69, of course, which is entitled The Way to Succeed and the Way to Suck Eggs. This is the holy hexagram. Plunge from the height, O God, and interlock with man. Plunge from the height, O man, and interlock with beast. The red triangle is the descending tongue of grace. The blue triangle is the ascending tongue of prayer. This interchange, the double gift of tongues, the word of double power, abrahadabra, is the sign of the great work. For the great work is accomplished in silence. And behold, is not that word equal to Keth, that is Cancer, whose sigil is? This work also eats up itself, accomplishes its own end, nourishes the worker, leaves no seed, is perfect in itself. Little children, love one another. So yeah, that perfectly describes the holy hexagram. There's no question or mystery left there. Okay, so how to understand this chapter. So the commentary, let's start with the commentary. The key to understanding of this chapter is given in the number and the title. The former being intelligible to all nations who employ Arabic figures. Okay, so clearly 69. The latter only to experts in deciphering English puns. So it took me a minute to figure this one out. But just the way to suck seed and the way to suck eggs. So just I'll leave that to your own ingenuity. The chapter alludes to Levi's drawing of the hexagram and is a criticism of or improvement upon it. Okay, and again, here's the picture of Eliphas Levi's The Great Seal of Solomon hexagram figure. The further commentary says, in the ordinary hexagram, the hexagram of nature, the red triangle is upwards, like fire, the blue triangle downwards, like water. In the magical hexagram, this is reversed. The descending red triangle is that of Horus, a sign specially revealed by him personally at the equinox of the gods. It is the flame descending upon the altar and licking up the burnt offering. The blue triangle represents the aspiration, since blue is the color of devotion, and the triangle, kinetically considered, is the symbol of directed force. Okay, so we clearly have a dichotomy here between the hexagram of nature and the hexagram of magic, or the holy hexagram. Okay, so further commentary. So in the first 3 paragraphs, this formation of the hexagram is explained. Yeah, it is. It is a symbol of the mutual separation of the holy guardian angel and his client. In the interlocking is indicated the completion of the work. Paragraph 4 explains in slightly different language what we have said above, and the scriptural image of tongues is introduced. In paragraph 5, the symbolism of tongues is further developed. Abrahadabra is our primal example of an interlocked word. We assume that the reader has thoroughly studied that work in Liber D, etc. The sigil of Cancer links up this symbolism with the number of this chapter. The remaining paragraphs continue the Gallic symbolism. Okay, so Abrahadabra. So there's this whole section in here where it talks about, and behold, is not that word equal to Keth, that is Cancer, whose sigil is. Okay, so how do we get there? So Abrahadabra, if we transliterate that into Hebrew and add those up with gematria, we get 418. If we do the same with the letter Keth spelled in full, we also get 418. So that's how we go from Abrahadabra to Keth, right? So further, the word Abrahadabra is a word of 11 letters, and 11, as we probably know, is the number of magic, which symbolizes or is symbolized with 5 plus 6, which, as we discussed at the beginning of this presentation, the microcosm 5 and the macrocosm 6. So the joining of those two things together, 5 and 5 plus 6 equals 11. So this could be seen as a symbol of the great work. And Abrahadabra is also known as the word of the Aeon. For those that are familiar with the Tarot, the Keth is associated with O.T.O 7, which is the chariot attributed to Cancer. So that's how we get from Abrahadabra to Cancer, and the sign of Cancer, which is looks strikingly similar to the number of this chapter. Okay, so now that we know how to draw the hexagrams, we can move on. And so the next thing here is the Latin. So what is this Latin? Okay, so Pater et Mater unus Deus arita means father and mother are one God, arita. Mater et Filius unus Deus arita is mother and son are one God, arita. Filius et Filiae unus Deus arita, son and daughter are one God, arita. Philia et pater unus deus arita, daughter and father are one God, arita. Okay, so what I get from this is that there's clearly a cycle going on from father to daughter, back to father again, which instantly reminds me of the Yod-He-Vav-He formula, right? Where the father and mother have their son, the daughter, which marries the prince from the other land, and then the prince then becomes the king, and the daughter becomes the queen, and then the whole cycle starts over again. Okay, so continued. So, well, I guess before we get there, do we have any questions so far? Because I know we've gone through a lot. Okay, feel free to jump in. Okay, so the text continues. Let him then return to the center, and so to the center of all, making the rosy cross as he may know how, saying, Ararita, Ararita, Ararita. In this the signs shall be those of Set triumphant and of Baphomet. Also shall Set appear in the circle. Let him drink of the sacrament, and let him communicate the same. Okay, so locally, what we normally do when for making the holy or making the rosy cross is the local convention is to draw the unicursal hexagram. The sign of Set triumphant is another name for Isis rejoicing, Mater triumphans. So that was the one that was omitted in the beginning from the Nox signs. Then the sign of Baphomet is another name for Mulier, aka Isis and welcome, sign of Babylon, and the attitude of Baphomet. Those are all the same, describing the same sign. Also shall Set appear in the circle. And because it's a circle, I thought, well, maybe this is some kind of invocation, although I don't know. Not 100% sure what also shall Set appear in the circle means. Regarding the sacraments, I recommend reading in Magic and Theory and Practice, chapter 20, which is entitled Of the Eucharist and of the Art of Alchemy. Hopefully it'll help elucidate this a little bit, although I don't know if it's not going to 100% make sense, but at least this is where he talks about Eucharistic ritual. So it might make some sense. Okay, so then let him say, omnio in duos, duo in unum, unus in nihil, hac nec quater, nec omnia, nec duo, nec unus, nec nihil sunt. Glory Patri et Matri et Filio et Filiae et Spiritui Sancto externo et Spiritui Sancto interno. Ut erat est erit in secula seculorum, sex in uno per nomen septem in uno, Ararita. Sorry, I can't help but get grandiose there. I don't know what the local convention in your area is, but for us, at Star Sapphire, at least for baptism and confirmation rituals, we use that the Gloria Patri et Matri section. So it has a particular association for me. Okay, but what does this all mean? It's in Latin again. So the first section means all into two in one in none. These are neither four, nor all, nor two, nor one, nor none. Okay, so there's a very conspicuous omission here. And whenever Crowley conspicuously omits something, it's almost as if he's drawing neon signs pointing towards something. So can anyone pick out what is missing?
The number 3.
Ah, there you go. Okay, so 3 must be important then to this ritual somehow. 3 is a very important number in magic. I encourage you to investigate that as you will. I'm sure your efforts will be well repaid. The next section, which I mentioned is said in baptism and confirmation rituals, is glory be to the Father and the Mother and the Son and the Daughter and the Holy Spirit without and the Holy Spirit within, as it was, is, will be for ages and ages, 6 in 1 through the name 7 in 1, Ararita. Okay. So, yeah. So then the conclusion section. So let him then repeat the signs of LVX, but not the signs of NOX. For it is not he that shall arise in the sign of Isis rejoicing. Okay. So there are a lot of unanswered questions, and perhaps these are answered as one becomes an adept in the AA. I don't know, but certainly these are questions I had. I'm sure there are others that could be added to this list. So my first question is, what's the goal of the Star Sapphire? What does it accomplish? I think if the commentary can be used as a reference, if this is the Thelemic version of the hexagram ritual, then assumingly that means that there's some kind of macrocosmic force that is either invoked, but is invoked. Yeah, I would say. But again, I don't know for sure. Who should perform the Star Sapphire? So, I think that goes back to the wording of let the adept be, at the very beginning of the text. That is like I mentioned, it's a very particular attainment in the AA system. What is the mystic rose? I have no idea there. Is this ritual different if you begin with the LBX signs instead of the Nox signs? I don't know. Does one make the holy hexagram by drawing it in the air, or is there something else implied here? Okay. What is the sacrament? It's never mentioned anywhere else except for the section about the sacrament. It doesn't say in the beginning, let him have his, cakes of light or whatever ready to go for the later in the ritual, so I don't know. Finally, there's kind of an ambiguous use of the word him here in the end. Who is the him referred to in the lines? Also shall Set appear in the circle. Let him drink of the sacrament and let him communicate the same. Who is the him? Is it Set or is it the magician? I don't know. It's hard to say. So I hope that has given you at least a little bit of a taste of these rituals, and I encourage you to go out into the world and try them out. Incorporate them into your rituals and see how they work for you. Yeah, I've just listed a couple of the books that I used and recommend for further reading. And that's the end. So love is the law, love under a will.
Thank you.
Yes. Hey.
High praise from the dog.
Canine applause.
Great.
Do we have
So,
a,
I guess any questions or anything, or has anyone tried the Star Sapphire? Has anyone ever done it?
Stop it now. Stop it. Ooh. I'm fairly new to this thing, so that was very interesting. Ooh.
Cool.
Jaylene and
I know it's
do-
a lot of stuff. Sorry, go ahead, Steve.
Jaylene and I do a version of this ritual that kind of is more sex magic, and it's a two-person thing, but it's also can be done publicly. And so, like when we get into the quarters, for example, one of us is on our knees like this, the other one is standing like this. So we are making a holy hexagram
Uh-huh.
With our bodies.
with our bodies.
Yeah.
I've read a couple of different versions of this, and the consensus seems to be that in the quarters, a male and female magician, or conversely, 2 male or 2 female, really. But it's the mystic, it's the mystic rose is the female assistant. And
Or
that's a,
male identifying.
yes. Or you have masculine and feminine energy, whoever embodies what, basically. But you're basically doing 69 in the quarters is one way I've heard it.
Yep.
Consummating with sex in the middle. The part there that you were bringing up, and I don't have it in front of me, the communion, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
The way I've heard this explained, X-rated here, the male magician goes down on the female magician, gets a mouthful of their combined juices, they exchange it in a passionate kiss, and that is the communion of the ritual.
Somehow I think there's more to the ritual than that. I think that's just
It's never been written down anywhere, and I've heard other versions of it that are different, of what's going on here and there and whatnot. But that one seems to me, given chapter 69 and all the effort to go into 69, and this is the holy hexagram, and you go to the quarters, you do the holy hexagram, seems pretty straightforward.
I mean, suck seed, suck eggs. I mean, it doesn't get,
Yeah. It nourishes the worker.
right. But forms no seed or whatever it is. Yeah.
So
Definitely.
I think that's been, now the book Aura Rita, which is a self-published book that a guy put out, like I said, has a different view on it. I've read that. Your mileage may vary.
That's right. Any other comments or questions?
Hey, quick comment.
I use the hex.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say I use the hexagram just as my symbol in general, but I haven't done any of the Thelemic rituals. But I find it interesting, the whole 3, 6, 8 thing, because that's kind of how I went with it. I started with a triangle, and then I went to 2 triangles, and then I went with the Merkaba, which is then like 8 points, or almost, it's almost like a square, but held in a different position, I guess, than the square is, or a cube. I shouldn't say a square, a cube. All right.
Cool. Thanks.
I'm curious whether anyone towards the very middle of the ritual, the whole business about the signs of Set Triumphant and of Baphomet. So Sean very aptly pointed out that those can be different names of some of the NOx signs. I'm curious if anyone has a different interpretation of what those could be.
Well, so just to kind of back myself up, I can't remember exactly where it is, but those are described in Crowley's writings as those signs. So just for what it's worth. But I agree that, it could be, it's open to interpretation for sure. So if anyone has any other interpretations of that, feel free to share.
I was going to say that I've seen at least one performance publicly of the Star Sapphire, and I don't know whether this deserves a lot of merit or not, but it's at least interesting discussion material that the sign of Baphomet. I saw someone basically mimic the pose in the drawing of Baphomet of Eliphas Levi, the famous sabbatic goat, with the male and female arms respectively pointing to opposite lunar crescents in the attitude of Solway at Coagula. I'm just curious if anyone else has seen anything similar to that regard.
Yeah, I've seen that too.
Cool.
What did we decide they were though when we were in our ritual? Because I think one of us does a Pampas and
Yeah, and the other one,
Typhon.
yeah.
Yeah. Because, yeah, I think it does say somewhere what it is. But it's the thing about Crowley, he's got 2 or 3 names for every sign and he just
Yeah, and that makes it
interchanges
so
them and you're like,
confusing.
what? What's the, oh, it's that one? Okay.
Right, yeah, why couldn't you just say that?
Right. Because he knew what he meant. You know,
Right, so
I
why
think,
don't, you-
Yeah.
yeah,
The
I
hell's
think
wrong with
anyone who's tried to or has studied, you know, Liber 15 for any period of time knows that Crowley was really, really terrible at stage directions. So that was definitely a weakness of his. So it's kind of not surprising that a lot of these.
I'm kind of thankful for that
for that,
aspect.
yes.
Because I don't really want Crowley over my shoulder during the whole mass going, no, you're doing it wrong. You're holding it wrong.
Right,
I
I'm
like
glad,
that he left it
I'm glad
open.
he left it to interpretation. I'm definitely glad.
We try our bishop's patience enough as it is.
My job.
Cool. Well, again, thanks for having me. I'm
Thank you.
really
you.
glad I was able to present for y'all.
Yeah. And you can stop the recording whenever you're
Cool.
feel you're